Well, that was a tough watch, but bring on the regular season. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Full Command Show. My name is Grant Mitchell, and we're here to talk about everything involving the Washington Commanders. This is the official game recap from the Baltimore Ravens against the Washington Commanders, the third and final game of the preseason. Once again, we saw the Commanders get absolutely smacked down on their home field, but hey, it's the preseason. It doesn't count until the final regular season record, and we still learned a lot and have a lot to talk about in this video. Guys, we are 2 weeks away from the official kickoff of the NFL season. Don't worry about what you just saw. Just think back to when Jayden Daniels and company were on the field for 4 plays. They go 74 yards, touchdown against the Bengals. That's what you have to look forward to. Plus, Terry McLaurin rejoining the team. Noah Brown going through some full-speed warm-ups before the game today. A lot of exciting developments. Brandon Coleman back from his injury. It's all starting to look up. Guys, like I said, this is my official reaction to the Commanders-Ravens preseason game. We're about to dive into everything that I learned and that I'm ready to share with you all. But before we do, make sure you hit the like button. That's the #1 way you can support me and the channel. Hit the subscribe button if you are new around here. And as we go through here, as always, go to the comment section. Let me know your thoughts on everything that I have to say in this video. Now, some opening notes here before we talk about what happened between the white lines. 32 players did not play, and so I did not expect much. That being said, got to see a couple of cool players. Brandon Coleman was originally ruled out, but he did end up playing for a couple of series. Maybe it was just one series, actually, now that I think about it. But he was out there. You saw Jordan Magee for the first time in this preseason. We got some more looks at Luke McCaffrey, really the most looks we've had at him. He was certainly a focal point of the game plan. Like I mentioned, Terry McLaurin was with the team. He showed up early to the game. That was nice. It was no longer an excused absence. And then he walked out of the tunnel with them out onto the field. And Noah Brown went through some what looked to be full-speed drills, caught some passes from Marcus Mariota. Also good to see him back as he's recovering from that Achilles tendonitis. And then we move on over into the game. So Dan Quinn said that this was an important day for roster decisions for those making the 53 and the 70, referring to the 53-man roster and the 70-man practice squad. So very early on, it was apparent the Commanders wanted to get a better look at Luke McCaffrey. Now, this is important because remember how I said 32 players did not play in this game? Jaylin Lane was one of those who did not play. He was a healthy scratch. You would think him and Luke McCaffrey being similar players could move into the slot, could move outside, first-year, second-year guys. You would think they're in relatively similar positions, but it's become very apparent that the Commanders view Lane in a tier above Luke. They say, look, we've seen enough from you, Jaylin. You're good. We know that as long as Terry and Noah Brown are out, you're a starter. Because who are the 2 healthy receiver scratches today? Deebo. Well, no, sorry. McLaurin is healthy, but we know his whole contract situation's going on. So the 2 healthy receiver scratches were Deebo and Jaylin Lane. So as it stands today, those are your starting receivers. That's what they told us. But Luke McCaffrey, no, you still got to go on that field and you still got to show us what you are made of. Now, I'm not going to bag on Luke like a lot of people were during his first 3 touches. He had 2 bubble screens and it was a jet sweep, and they went for a combined total of 5 yards. Nobody was blocking. It's not his fault. You actually saw some good moments from Luke later in the game. He had a couple of catches. One, he did get leveled running out of bounds, but still showcased his ability to make the catch and get some yards after catch. And then he actually caught a pass from Josh Johnson in the third quarter, I want to say, where he broke 2 tackles, almost broke a third, showed off some wiggle, and also picked up some nice yards there. With all that being said, I do still worry that he just looks a little stiff. But at the very least, he's trying. He can make some solid blocks. He had a really good block on a screen today, but then he also completely whiffed on a block, and it led to a 5-yard loss on the ground. He does play well in kick coverage. He's actually really good. He makes some tackles, and we saw last year that he could return kicks as well. So Luke's in an interesting position as a receiver and as a 3rd-round pick. It's the 2nd year of your career. Like, yeah, it's early, but you do have to start to produce, and he looks nowhere near that level. So hopefully he gets there. Hopefully the potential is still untapped to a certain extent. He is still adapting to the NFL, adapting to the receiver position. He was a quarterback until halfway through college, so we'll see what happens. But Luke was definitely somebody who had his name called a few times today because, like I mentioned, Cliff Kingsbury and DQ clearly wanted to feature him. The kickoffs were a lot better today. This is not the sexiest topic to talk about, but it is important. The kickoffs against the Bengals were just awful. Magee did a much better job today getting them to the 5, even inside the 5, but not so far as to go through the end zone. He also had some more arc on them. When they're not as much of line drives, it's easy to just catch a line drive kick and go straight forward. But when there's a lot of arc on the ball and you have to come down with it and take that kind of half step backwards and down, and then you can go forward, it actually does make a huge difference. And you saw that reflected in the Ravens' lack of success returning kicks. So on that front, it was good for Magee. On the other hand, he comes out and he misses his first kick. Now, it's from 53, and that's not a short kick. But we also are in a new era of the NFL where you've got a rookie for the Jags making it from 70. And whoever this new regen of Justin Tucker is for the Ravens, he looked better than prime Justin Tucker, making it from 63, 64, whatever it was. I saw Joey Sly made it from 63. The Titans had someone make it from 62 today. A 53-yard kick in this NFL is no longer that far. A 50-yard kick is a 40-yard kick 10 to 15 years ago. So to be making from 53 and to seem to be totally incapable of making from beyond, it's definitely a concern. Now, Magee did drill from 47, split the uprights perfectly later in the game, but 50% on kicks is not good enough. 75, 80% on kicks is not good enough. You need to be in that high 80s, low 90s to actually be a legitimate kicker. And we talked about the strain that not having a good kicking team puts on your offense. You got to keep going for those fourth downs, and you have to convert at a historic rate like you did last year just to overcome that. So certainly something to keep an eye on. Whitt Jr. throughout this game, throughout this preseason, has made it very apparent the Commanders are playing man coverage and blitzing on basically every third down. I do wonder if this is just giving the guys reps and there will be a more strategy involved. Certainly the game plans will be different, but we know he wants to get to that aggressive man look. And I don't know if that's going to change when he has different personnel on the field. If anything, it would probably make him more inclined to run man coverage when you have better corners. But I just worry that other teams are going to they're going to know exactly what's coming. They know it's going to be a man blitz on third down every single time. But at the same time, if your corners are covering and you're getting after the quarterback, well, then it works out. So I guess we'll just see what happens there. Going over to offense, CRod, Chris Rodriguez, he looked fast, man. I know one of the focal points for him during this offseason was to shed some weight. That was from Dan Quinn himself. Not that he was fat, but he was bulky. And if you're going to be someone who's replacing Brian Robinson Jr., again, CRod might get the first carry of the entire season, then we got to see some speed. And certainly you saw it today. I read before the game that during the offseason, he'd worked with a speed coach and he'd registered 20 miles an hour plus more during this summer's camp than he had during his entire career before combined. So certainly a sign, and you see that in his production. Now, he got some great blocking early on, but his first carry goes for 10 yards, then he goes for 7, then he goes for 12. I think his next carries were 3 and 2, and then he checks out of the game. But when you have the rotation with Bill, he might not get 5 carries a row. Eckler and McNichols as well. You might not get 5 carries in a row. So if you're getting 3 carries and you're going 10, 7, 12, yeah, that works really well, and it opens up so much for this Commanders offense. It was good to see Jordan Magee and Brandon Coleman for the first time. Like I mentioned, they were out there. Unfortunately, their teammates, Sam Hartman and Josh Johnson, were also on the field. And we're going to get into my 5 players to remember later on, just like we do after every game. Got some cool inclusions today. If you guys are unfamiliar with the series, after every game, I pick 5 players who were really good, really bad, caused me some hesitation, whatever, and I assign them a different color square. Red is awful, yellow is I'm concerned, green is good, and dark green is you earned a game ball today. We're going to get to that in just a second, and I would be giving reds to Josh Johnson and Sam Hartman, but I almost thought that it would be a disservice to this video to even give them any airtime. They've just been awful, both of them. Hartman probably worse, but what does that really matter? They've both thrown at least 1 interception in every game of the preseason. Johnson looks more competent moving the ball around, but as soon as he gets to important moments, he just loses his head. You saw him throw an interception at the 5-yard line against the Bengals. He threw an interception. He was late and behind on a skinny post going to the end zone. I forget who the receiver was, but it was up the right side, and it was picked off in the end zone. It's like, man, you can't be late. You can't be behind. You can't do both, especially in the red zone. And now you just turn the ball over. So for everyone who's worried about the final score, the Commanders, their aggregate score during the preseason, I want to say it was 109-38. If you add up their score and their opponent's score throughout the preseason, they lost by 71 points. That's not a fair reflection of the starters and the main players on the team. It's that your quarterbacks are just constantly turning the ball over. And then once the fourth and fifth and sixth string guys, the guys who are going to make practice squad or not even make it, guys going to be working at Kroger next week, they just completely let go of the rope. So I'm not judging the team on their results, but these performances from Hartman and Johnson have just been awful. Johnson's played on 14 teams. I don't know if there's a 15th in sight for him. And Hartman, if he makes the practice squad, it's going to be because he and Jaden Daniels are so close. The way he's playing, he looks like a football costume model for Party City. That looks like the appropriate level for Sam Hartman right now. I don't know what he did during this offseason. I know he got surgery, but his rehabilitation program, whenever he couldn't throw a football, whatever film he was studying, whatever his strength training routine was, you got to leave that in the past, man. And I don't know if you're going to get another opportunity because he looked horrendous. And I can't see the Commanders keeping two quarterbacks. More than two. I'll be shocked if Johnson or Hartman makes this team. Maybe Johnson as an emergency quarterback, but that still counts on your 53-man roster. So I really don't know. On the flip side of that, Norrell Pollard made some big plays today. He had a couple of good plays throughout the preseason. I think he's definitely a practice squad candidate. Ali Cajo, if he does not make the team, he's certainly one of those guys competing for that final linebacker spot. He's a lock to make the practice squad. He's a very sure-handed tackler. Don't know if he's quite mobile enough to be on the field and reliable in pass coverage. I also just haven't really seen enough looks of it, so I genuinely don't know the answer to that question. But certainly he does a good job getting, whenever he gets opponents in his hands, he makes sure he gets that tackle. Had a couple of nice open field tackles today, so I wanted to shout his name out. Kain Medrano, another linebacker as well, who didn't come out to start the second half, but then was playing at the end of the fourth quarter, which I don't mind. I don't mind him and Johnny Newton as well got a lot of reps. I don't mind the coaching staff giving these younger players extra reps. Medrano was interesting because when he's on the field, you feel his speed and aggression, and you also see him pop up in so many different areas. Sometimes he's rushing off the edge. Sometimes he's down in the A gap and he's coming on a double mug blitz. Sometimes he's dropping into the coverage. He's playing the run really physically. You see him all over the place, but he does make mistakes. He's a rookie. He's drafted in the 6th round. I'm not saying that that's a problem. That's supposed to happen. It's almost as if he's too aggressive, and some of it needs to be tempered a little bit. Sometimes he can get caught shooting the wrong gaps, but at the same time, he is shooting the gaps, and so he's making plays. It's not like it's a constant negative. And if you're asking me, would I rather have him make splash plays with some mistakes that can be fixed, or have somebody do nothing, which, no offense, but that's kind of what Dom Hampton looked like. Looked like he was just kind of sitting in the middle of the field in that Patriots game. I'm certainly going to take the Medrano side of things. And his athletic profile is so interesting. He's gotten the most most reps at linebacker so far this preseason. It seems like he's the third choice. Like it's Luvu and Wagner and then Medrano. So don't be surprised if you see him during the regular season. Biggest play of the game, biggest play of the preseason, 52-yard pass from Hartman to Colson Yankoff. Yankoff is someone who made the team last year as a UDFA rookie, had a lot of special teams contributions. That will still certainly be a key component of what he does for this team, assuming he makes the 53-man roster. He could also be on the P squad, but you did see him actually get to catch and run. And let's be honest, we haven't seen that from someone like Ben Sinnott. And I can't blame that entirely on him. I don't even know how much blame I can put on him at all. With Hartman and Johnson on the field, it's just so tough to evaluate basically any receiver or tight end, but you did see something from Yankoff today. Let's move on and let's talk about the 5 players to remember. Once again, we got 4 different options for these players. A red square means that I have completely given up. I don't know what to say. I don't want to see you again. That would be Josh Johnson and Sam Hartman, but not even going to waste the time. Yellow is I'm concerned. This is troubling. This could be an issue. Now, with roster cuts due in 3 days, you'll probably start to hear some cuts tonight or tomorrow. Yellow could be, hey, man, like I'm not saying it's a guarantee, but you might get cut. We'll see. It could be you're falling on the pecking order, whatever. Green is good. Thought you played well. Was impressed. And then dark green is a game ball. We do not have a game ball today. Going to go ahead and spoil that. We only had one throughout the preseason. It was Josh Connolly Jr. in that Bengals game. Thought he was outstanding. I think that's the best individual performance that I have seen in the preseason so far. But let's go, without further ado, let's go ahead and let's talk about number 5. We're going to get a green square here for Ja'Cory Brooks. Now, a quote here from Brian Mitchell, which I agreed with. Brian Mitchell said, I like everything about this young man. Might be tough for him to make the roster. Now, two separate thoughts there, but I agree with both of them. Look, it's a crowded wide receiver room. Without Terry and Noah, it definitely does not look like it. But if we're to assume they will be there, you've got Terry and Noah as your outside guys. You got Deebo as your do everything. You got Jaylin Lane in the slot. Luke McCaffrey is making this team, like it or not. And then are they even going to keep 6 receivers? That's not a guarantee. I think it's going to happen. And Ja'Cory Brooks is my pick for that 6th slot. But KJ Osborne is also someone that the coaching staff likes. He was on the team last year. He was listed number 1 at the top of the receiver depth chart, or the punt returner depth chart, excuse me. Michael Gallup is a 5, 6, 7 year, however long veteran of the NFL. Chris Moore was supposedly a standout from camp, although he was Chris Moore, man. Every time I see him, it looks like he doesn't want to make this team. Hartman's best throw of the day was a 50-yard free play on a go ball up the left side. Chris Moore should have caught it for a touchdown, and it was a very feeble attempt, very weak attempt at playing the ball. Didn't catch it, even despite his lack of aggression. I thought he still could have caught it, and it slipped through his hands. But point being, there's plenty of people competing for the spot. Ja'Cory Brooks earns that 6th receiver spot. In my eyes, he could be ahead of Luke McCaffrey. Again, there's no way they're cutting Luke McCaffrey, but just on who's better purely from a receiver standpoint. Don't forget, Luke does have special teams contributions, so that's a part of it. But who's better? Who do I want outside the numbers right now? I would take Brooks ahead of McCaffrey just from what I've seen in these games. I don't think it's a coincidence that whenever Josh Johnson has been in the game, he has looked in Ja'Cory Brooks' direction more times than not. Today, he made a really tough catch in traffic in the middle of the field. Again, you compare that to a lot of the drops that you've seen from these other players. It wasn't good. I believe Ja'Cory Brooks is the Commanders' preseason receiving leader. I'm not 1,000% on that, but it would make sense to me because he had 5 receptions for 50-something yards in the Patriots game. He only had 1 in the next game, but Jaylin Lane, I want to say, was the leader in that one with only 3 receptions, and then he had 4 receptions today for 24 yards, I believe it was. So I would expect Ja'Cory Brooks led the preseason for the Commanders in receiving. And yeah, he has safe hands. He fights for yards after catch. I like what I see from him. I'm going to give another green box to a preseason debutant, Jordan Magee. Now, his performance was not perfect. Certainly, there's some mistakes, but you got to keep in mind there's definitely an element of rust. Whitt Jr. said that he was the most impressive player of the training camp. So that's got to count for something. And when I looked what he did on the field and I thought about how he could look with competent corners, maybe even great to elite corners behind him, a solid pass rush, a defensive line that theoretically is better against the run, and an all-pro teammate of Luvu or Wagner, whoever's lining up next to him, I could see him looking even better than he did today, a lot better, and like a really serviceable player. His speed was apparent, his tenacity, his desire, even when he was behind on plays, he was rallying to the ball as quick as he could. He was crashing hard downhill, making tough tackles. The speed and the intensity, you saw him going sideline to sideline. He was physical. He controlled the center of the field, just like Kain Medrano, not without some mistakes, but for a 5th-round player who barely got on the field last year and has been not played throughout the preseason, he's been a little bit limited by some injuries. Mistakes are going to happen, and that's okay. You don't need him to play 70, 80% of snaps next year. But if he gets on the field for 30%, and of those 30%, he looks good for 90% of them, then you've got yourself a real player and someone to lean on moving forward in the future as part of your developmental core. So, Jordan Magee, green square for him. Another green, we're going to go with Brandon Coleman. Now, he didn't play very much today, but similar to Magee, it's a guy who had not played in the preseason. He had an ankle injury. He's been banged up. He's going into his 2nd year. It's a new position, and he looked incredible. Now, it's the preseason, and he's going against backups. Don't let me mislead you and say this guarantees Brandon Coleman's going to be an all-pro this year. But that first play for CRod, him and Chris Paul, man, they just demolished. Was it Chris Paul or Trent Scott? I actually can't remember now, but it was one of those two. And they just opened up a massive hole on the left side for CRod, and he went right through it. He was tossing dudes around for fun. And with his athletic profile and just with his sheer size, he certainly does have the potential. I'm gonna allude back to something that Brian Mitchell said. He and JP Finley were making picks for players they thought had the potential to make the first Pro Bowl of their career this year. And Brian Mitchell picked Brandon Coleman. And certainly when you see some of the things he was doing today, you see, okay, I see the power. I see the speed. I see the leverage, the technique, all of that. It was against backups. We got to see him in the regular season. But for him to just step in after 2 days of practice with a bum ankle and do that at a new position with guys that he's not used to getting reps next to, he's used to being with your Laramie Tunsil's and your Tyler Biadashes, I was really impressed. And kind of like I was saying with Jordan Magee, if a rising tide raises all ships, then when you've got Laramie Tunsil right here and Tyler Biadasz and Cosme's your opposite guard and Josh Connerly's the quickest ascending rookie the Commanders have, it seems like, Brandon Coleman, if he's the weak point, well, he looks like he could be a real player. So I just want to shout his name out. He did not play very much, not a ton of reps, but boy, did he look good and powerful when he was on the field. And that's what I wanted to see. Our penultimate square here, we're going to give a yellow, unfortunately, to Eddie Goldman. And I got to be honest here. So when I made my 53-man roster predictions a couple of days ago, I had Eddie Goldman making the team. I only had the Commanders keeping 4 defensive tackles just because I thought there was so much competition all over the roster, really. And I had Goldman as my 4th DT. If we look at the top 3, they're locks. Daron Payne's on the team. Javon Kinlow's on the team. Johnny Newton is on the team. You don't know if they're going to keep 4 or 5. And if they're 4, well, Goldman is at risk here. And with what I've saw today and what I've seen throughout the preseason, I really have to reevaluate where I see him standing because Sheldon Day, to my eyes, has looked a lot better than Eddie Goldman. Now, Goldman has had his moments. There was one play today where he just obliterated the center, and it should have been a tackle for loss. Unfortunately, his teammates couldn't rally to the ball, and it ended up being a positive play, but that's not his fault. He also destroyed, I think it was the guard on a pass play and got to Devin Leary 10, 12 yards in the backfield, but it was an easy sack, and he let Leary slip out of his hands, and it ended up being a positive play. And then there were times where, for such a massive man, I don't know, what, let me look it up. Eddie Goldman, height, weight. Let's see what the old Google has to say. He's listed at 6'4", 320. For such a massive man, he's supposed to be a nuisance just by his sheer size, if nothing else. Take out strength and technique and all of that. Just his size should make him difficult to move. Yet there was one play, I don't think it was the touchdown, the first touchdown of the game, but I think it was very early on. I think it might have been that drive a couple plays before. He's getting blocked by the right guard, I believe it was, and they're going from right to left. And Goldman just does such a horrible job of staying square. And it wasn't even a good block that was delivered to him. It was not a good block. He should have, just off of technique alone, simply just being a football player, he should have been able to get off that and stay square and fill in the hole. But the guard moved him like he was 180 pounds. It was such a strange thing to watch. It almost defied the laws of physics from what I was watching. And there are plays where, again, for such a huge man, he does not fill space. He does not absorb double teams well. He doesn't command attention. And then you flip that to Sheldon Day, who's significantly smaller. He's 6'1", 285, playing the spot on the field where you need to be at your biggest defensive tackle. Yet I see him getting into the backfield on pass rush reps. I see him getting pressures and forcing the ball out early. I see him getting a TFL where he kind of bends underneath the interior player and almost grabs the running back's ankles and then just doesn't let go. Not a gator roll, but like grab him, roll over, and you're not going anywhere. And I just feel as if Sheldon Day, despite Eddie Goldman being a free agent signing and that artificially elevating him in status, I feel like Sheldon Day has been better. And I don't know if that's my eyes are deceiving me. I don't know if the games are different from training camp and practices, but that's what I see. So if I'm Eddie Goldman, I'm concerned that Sheldon Day, if they're only keeping 4 spots, Sheldon Day might be that 4th man, and he might be on the P squad. And my final box here, because we're not giving out a game ball, this does not necessarily mean that he was the best player today. I don't think that. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Chris Paul, who has not gotten much love throughout these videos. I really don't think I've said his name all that much. And honestly, I've talked a lot of crap about the Commanders' backup players because the offensive line, they've just gotten no push at the point of attack once the 3rd, 4th stringers come in. But Chris Paul has been one of the backups to really defy that. In 65 pass protection snaps in the preseason, he allowed 0 sacks, 0 quarterback hits, only 1 pressure. That's despite, again, I believe, playing both left side and right side. I already mentioned the play with him and Brandon Coleman earlier today. He did some really nice work in the running game. I want to say he was a part of that GT counter that led to the Bill touchdown. I'd have to watch that back. I think it was Wiley, and then it was Wiley and either Trent Scott or Chris Paul. Again, I can't remember which one, but he's been involved in some big plays, and he's definitely he's given me a sense of comfort trying to play that or trying to fill that guard spot, knowing that Sam Cosmi's coming in the season injured, and Brandon Coleman was injured, and you're having to move Alec Reddy to the right, and then Andrew Wiley was going to be at right tackle, but then he had to fill in at left guard, and your guard depth started to look really thin. Well, Chris Paul has given me some peace of mind, and I feel comfortable with him and Trent Scott and George Fant being the primary backups at those positions. So once again, the final players in the squares, we're going to get a green for Ja'Cory Brooks, a green for Jordan Magee, green for Brandon Coleman, yellow for Eddie Goldman, and a green for Chris Paul. Guys, that's going to do it for my Commanders Ravens preseason week 3 game recap. Make sure you go to the comment section. Let me know what all of your thoughts are. Hit the like button if you did enjoy this video, and if you're excited for the regular season, make sure that you subscribe to the channel. If you are new around here, I'm coming out with daily uploads, a lot of times multiple uploads every day. And as always, I will see you in the next one. Have a great day.